Hi, everyone, and welcome to Creative Thrive. In this episode, I'm so honored to welcome a truly unique artist and visionary whose work beautifully explores the intersection of nature, art, storytelling, and ritual. He's not just an artist, he truly is a visionary who, through his transformative creations, connects us deeply with the beauty of nature. Our guest is the mastermind behind Morning Altars, a practice of creating mesmerizing, impermanent earth art from natural materials. His transformative work has inspired thousands worldwide, including myself, offering a beacon of hope and a path to healing through nature, art, and creativity. His work captures the essence of the moment and teaches us the art of mindfulness and the beautiful, graceful act of letting go. As an acclaimed author and a revered figure in eco art, his universal message inspires people worldwide, fostering a sense of inclusion and connection to each other and to the earth herself. He reminds us all that there is profound beauty in impermanence. His workshops and his talks, he advocates for an artistic ritual that enhances our awareness, our presence, and the human connection, especially to the natural world. His art installations and workshops have graced venues such as Google, the 9/11 Memorial Plaza, the California Academy of Sciences, and countless others. His first book, which I loved, we'll be talking about, Morning Altars, a 7-step practice to nourish your soul through nature, art, and ritual, has definitely ignited an international movement. And it invites us all to renew our relationship with the earth and rediscover our awe and love for nature through meaningful and meditative creations. So prepare to be inspired today and perhaps find a new way to interact with nature and take a minute to notice the beauty that surrounds all of us. Please welcome to Creative Thrive, Day Schildkret. Hi.
I am so happy to
Ooh.
be here. What
Oh,
an
I'm so
introduction. Are you talking about me?
I am talking about you. And before we jumped on and started recording, I shared with you, I'm so inspired by your work. I've followed you on Instagram for such a long time.
Thank you.
Just mesmerized. The first thing I'm so curious about and would like to share with everyone is how you got started into something that has truly transformed into a movement now.
Yeah. The origin story. Um I don't even know where to start sometimes, like sometimes I wonder, did this start when I was 5 years old? And, I used to love saving worms on the driveway after a rainstorm. And I used to puncture little holes in my front yard and decorate the holes that I would put the worms back into the
Amazing.
earth. Like, did it start then? Did it start like, hundreds or thousands of years ago with maybe some of my ancestors who also made altars or made art or did ritual? Did it start 11 years ago when my dad died and I went through a major relationship breakup? And this practice actually became a lifesaver for me as a way to metabolize my grief. Did it start then? I don't know. I'm not sure. My story of when it became Morning Altars, this thing that I've been teaching around the world now, I'd say it started probably 12 years ago. I think it was 12 that my father died and that relationship break up. And I adopted my dad's dog at the time, a little miniature schnauzer. And we would go on these long morning dog walks, and my head would be down, kind of ruminating in thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, sometimes with grief, it's like we can get lost in trying to understand what happened, trying to navigate our own heartbreak. And she was just being a dog, being curious. and just excited to be alive. And one morning we walked to the top of a hill in a place I was living in the East Bay in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
And underneath this eucalyptus tree were these beautiful amber colored mushrooms that look like someone painted them with watercolor. And I sat down under that tree that morning, and I don't know what compelled me. Maybe it was the little boy that still lives inside of me, but I started to arrange the mushrooms into a shape. And then I took some eucalyptus bark and some eucalyptus caps and some leaves, and I just let myself get lost in timelessness. And I let myself just really sit with the earth, sit with being creative. And I was arranging the mushrooms and the eucalyptus cap and the eucalyptus buttons into a shape. And I let myself just get lost in creating. And I finished, and I looked down at what I made, which was a beautiful symmetrical piece of art made out of nature, totally impermanent, probably was destroyed within like a few minutes later. And something shifted inside of me.
Mm.
My grief felt lighter. My body felt more connected. My mind felt calmer. And I knew something had happened here. This was not normal. This was healing. And I made a commitment to myself to return to that very tree for 30 days and to make a altar every day for 30 days. And I did. And those 30 days came and went, and I didn't want to stop. And it became something I did every day since, as a way of just trying to remind myself what it means to be a human being, what it means to be heartbroken, a way to move my grief that felt creative and life affirming. It became a thing. And then I actually started to put it out into the world. And the most amazing thing started to happen was people around the world, from Poland to Brazil to Australia, people started to actually go out where they were living and sit on the earth where they were, collect material, and make mourning altars for whatever life experience they were going through. For instance, one woman in England sent me a photo and a story of her altar. She was sitting in her car, dropped her kids off at school. It was the 10th year anniversary of her mom's death, and she didn't know what to do. I mean, this is a common problem for most people in the world, where like we don't have collective rituals where we know what to do with our grief. So people are
Absolutely.
just kind of like stuck with it. And she was just scrolling on Instagram, sitting in the parking lot of her kid's school. She somehow came across a story I posted about metabolizing my grief through making art. She left her car, she went into the woods behind her kid's school. She found pine cones, moss, some bones. She sat on the earth and she just made something beautiful. And she wrote to me and said it was the first time in 10 years that she felt connected to her mom and was able to speak to her mom and feel close to her again. And I woke up to this email just like crying that some random woman in England could actually leave her car and leave her screen and go sit on the earth and actually connect with her mother. You know, so this is a very simple and profound practice. It's free. You don't have to be any age to do it. You don't have to be in any location. It's so available to everyone. It just allows us to be a kid again, and yet it allows us to remember and to heal. So it's very very dynamic practice.
I think the things that I take away from what you're saying is that, first of all, you allow yourself to slow down.
Exactly.
right? And I think in life in general, we don't allow ourselves to sit with any emotion we have,
Yeah.
and especially grief. We're often taught to push through it or get over it, or
Yeah.
aren't you feeling better yet? Right? Are often the tropes that people give us. And I think the connection to nature is so incredibly healing in and of itself, that creating something with intention in mind and love in your heart of what you're pouring into that. And again, knowing the impermanence of it
Yeah. Yeah.
is such an incredibly beautiful, healing thing.
It's healing and confronting.
Mm.
A story that I tell often is years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was the scholar and fellow with the Andy Warhol Foundation and the Nature Conservancy in New York. What that means is I had 2 weeks where I could live in his house and have access to a mile of beach for 2 weeks. The only prerequisite was on the last day, they would invite the board of the foundation and the press to see something I made. That was the only
Mhm.
prerequisite. So I had 2 weeks to wander and explore. The day before, I foraged lobster claws and crab shells and seaweed. I woke up at dawn the last day of the exhibit of the fellowship. I sat on the sand for 8 hours, making the most exquisite, symmetrical piece of art. Half an hour before, I was going to go like clean myself up and take some photographs of it. And the ocean came and didn't just grab the altar, didn't just grab the material I foraged, but actually was one of those waves that left the sand kind of like a shelf.
Mhm.
There was nothing. And so you would think by me conceiving and practicing this modality that I would be like very zen about it. And instead, I threw a temper tantrum and I screamed and I pounded my fists on the earth. And I was left only with this story when they came. I had nothing else to give them. I had no art to show. I had no materials to show. I just had a story to tell. And so the confronting part of impermanence is that whether or not you prefer it, it happens, right? It's not just like, wouldn't it be great if the ocean came when the press was there or when the board was there and it took it and it was this dramatic moment? But sometimes life changes when you least expect it. Sometimes someone dies, or you lose a job, or you have to move, or there's a global crisis when you least
Mhm.
expect it, and you have to roll with that. And this is a very low stakes practice where you get to encounter a daily way of rolling around with impermanence so that when life actually changes, you have some chops.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about change, and it's made me ponder it a lot because of the impermanence of what you're creating. And also, to hear you talk about change, we have no control over change. We must change,
Yeah.
whether we want to or not. So we either go kicking and screaming
Yeah.
right into the changes, or we do have to find some grace and space to allow ourselves to maneuver into it.
Yeah.
And it's been really interesting knowing that I was talking to you and doing research, and also thinking about how ritual is such a beautiful way to do that. Not just to always say goodbye, but also to say hello.
Yeah. 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 I mean, ritual is the marker of that gateway,
Hmm.
right? I mean, part of what you said earlier, I want to bring up right now, which is we move too quickly.
Hmm.
We're all moving too quickly. We're too distracted. We're too busy. We're on our screens. We're barely paying attention, right? And so this is not how it's been, by the way. Like you go back 100, 200 years, people were paying a lot more attention, especially to big and important moments in life. Nowadays, there are these milestones that happen and we just walk right through them without marking them. The problem is if you don't mark milestones, then you're some way down the line and you think that you're the same, for instance, person that you were, but you're not. Here's an example of that. For my recent book, Hello, Goodbye, I interviewed almost 300 people for the book. One of the people I interviewed was this woman named Susan, who was a secretary at a job for 30 years, which is really unusual these days. She retired, didn't do anything to mark her retirement, maybe went out for dinner with her husband. And she said for 2 years after her retirement, she was waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning with panic attacks. Her mind, her psyche thought that she was still in the job. So her panic attack was, I didn't hand in the report, I'm late for work, my boss is pissed at me. It took her like 30 minutes to come off of that panic attack. And that was the first 2 years of her retirement. So after we interviewed, she got inspired to do a ritual to mark that transition between goodbye to her job and the identity that she understood herself at for 30 years, and hello to this new person and this new purpose. And the ritual helped her reorient. It helped her understand. It gave her pause, and it allowed her to be witnessed so that she could change as her life changed. And that's the purpose of the ritual, is that they mark turns. And here's a beautiful kind of wordplay. They mark turns on the path by asking us to return to what's important.
Oh, yes. Do you think, yes, we're distracted, yes, we're busy, yes, we're on screens all the time, we don't come up for air, we don't allow ourselves to come up for air. I think many people feel like they have to hustle and keep moving all the time. Do you think we don't celebrate these markers and create these rituals, or do you think it's become performative now?
All of it.
Yeah.
All of it. So much of it's performative.
Yeah.
So a lot, I mean, social media it's a cesspool of performance. So if you don't share it with your followers, it didn't happen. And also we don't do it because the culture that we live in is not interested in you slowing down. It's interested in productivity. It's interested in competency. It's interested in growth. It's interested in movement. It's interested in over busyness, the value system of the culture itself. And it's also interested in individuality. Rituals were as I said, about 100, 200 years ago, they were not just a personal thing that you did, but you did it within your village, or you did it collectively. There were
It was
certain
community based.
Yeah, the community would come together and do rituals. I mean, I had that experience growing up within my own Jewish culture. I was taught how important rituals were for not just our own understanding of life, but also they were a way to bring the community back together again. They were essential. If you didn't have the rituals, the community would stop gathering. So things would happen, divorce or marriage or birth or death, and the community would come back together again. Which, by the way, is the same etymology of the word art. To bring back together again. It's the same etymology of the word remember. To bring back together again. To remember. So when we do rituals, we can remember. When we do rituals, we can regather. When we do rituals, we can return. It's an opportunity for us to do it again, because life is inherently distracting and disorienting, and things just start to unravel and people get lost, and they need mechanisms that help bring them back into focus, bring us back on course, bring us back to what matters. Because it's inherently, for instance, like as a human, we forget all the time. So we need help remembering. The rituals and ceremonies are they're helpful ways that we can remember. And so, these days, we don't have a lot of communal things that bring us back together again. And
I
if you,
don't
yeah,
I don't mean to cut you off, but I don't think we have a lot of things that bring us ritualistically back to ourselves again,
we don't.
to self-care and to self-feel and to sit with ourselves and look at what we're feeling because we're too busy to push through.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, the distinction between self-care and therapy on one hand and ritual on the other is that the rituals are mechanisms that allow us to remember and mark change. So they can be self-care-ish,
Mm-hmm.
but they're ways to mark distinctions. Here's a very easy one. I woke up this morning. That's a distinction, right? So does this moment matter? That's the question. Does waking up this morning matter? For most of us, it doesn't. And therefore, we grab our phones or, we kind of like carry on with our day because that moment didn't really matter. But
Mm-hmm.
if you pull back a little bit and you realize some people didn't wake up this morning, and maybe, and not maybe, one day you won't wake up in the morning, but today you did. The question is, what does this help you remember? And for me, waking up this morning helped me remember that I love my life, that I'm grateful for my health, that I am grateful for my new puppy and my friends and my family. I'm grateful to have food in the refrigerator. I'm grateful for the land that I live on. I'm grateful for my ancestry and all of the sacrifice, and on and on and on. Just by remembering that this morning wasn't guaranteed, but it happened.
So my talking about the rituals that we have with ourselves, because many people I spoke to in anticipation of speaking to you and my excitement about it, many people confuse ritual and routine.
Yeah.
So they view their daily routine or their routines as some form of ritual. Or the other school of thought is people tended to think that a ritual had a religious undertone, perhaps, or a wedding was some form of ritual that they felt they couldn't participate in because maybe they didn't believe in that thing or it felt too formalized, which is why I again love the work
Yeah.
that you do.
Thank you. I would say one of my both beloved allies and supporters is Esther Perel. Esther has so gracefully and gratefully raised up my own work in her work. And she is onto the importance of ritual and helps to understand the distinction. She teaches in her own courses the distinction between ritual and routine, as do I.
Mm-hmm.
One of her distinctions, she says, is routines guide us through the day, rituals guide us through our lives. I like that,
I do too. I like
right?
that a lot.
Another way that I make the distinction is you look at the words. Routine has the word route in it.
Mm-hmm.
So routines are interested in getting us from point A to point B. Think of your like nighttime routine or your morning routine. You have certain things that you're trying to get to in the evening in order to get to the destination, which is bed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there are guidance mechanisms. They're, brush your teeth, wash the dishes, shut the lights, etc. Rituals are not interested in destination. They're interested in remembrance and meaning. And so, for instance, a lot of people use the word, my coffee ritual, which it could be. Anything could be made into a ritual. That's the beautiful, creative, imaginative thing about rituals is you can literally pivot and make it sacred and make it meaningful. We all have that innate creativity and ability. But the question is, if you're having your coffee, what makes it meaningful? Not as a concept, but in that moment. And so I'll tell you, you want to hear like a quick coffee ritual that I
Absolutely.
did?
Absolutely.
So during the pandemic, the early days of the pandemic, when my life was going through massive changes, my mom's health was deteriorating, my grandmother was in the hospital, lots of things were happening that were really hard to navigate. And I needed as many rituals in my day to help guide me through my day. So that I could be guided in life, to put it into Esther's terminology.
Hmm.
And so I needed something simple, accessible, not complicated. One of the things I did was I drink coffee every morning. I make a drip coffee and I have little filters. So I decided on the filter the night before, I was going to write a reminder. My nighttime self was going to write a reminder to my morning self
Oof, that's great.
with a pencil. So
Hmm.
every night I would basically say, like, what did I learn today? What was meaningful about today that I want to remember tomorrow morning? And I just wrote a sentence on my coffee filter. The next morning I would come down from my bedroom and I would go to make coffee and I would read the reminder and I'd take a breath in, a breath out, and I would try and embody that remembering. And then I just would make my coffee like normal. But it became a ritual because it was meaningful.
Well, it's the intention. I mean, for me, and ritual has become something that is important for me. And part of it is self care.
Yeah.
And in self care, not in a beauty way, in self care of perseverance
Yeah.
and being able to get through some challenging times as well. But ritual becomes very important for me. Cleaning becomes a ritual for me
Sure.
because as I do it, I can remember my partner and I can polish photographs and I can have conversations but my personal ritual is through my meditation practice and through my yoga practice and the intentions that I set for myself for my day and my gratitude practice. Yes, they are practices and I'm using those words, but they also become rituals because of how I set them up for myself, how I cleanse my altar space, what I do, and set my intentions to
Do
move
you mind if
forward.
I fiddle with what you're doing?
Go for
Okay.
it, fiddle.
So ritual, the beautiful thing about rituals is that there always needs to be something symbolic, right? Something that represents something. So to enhance your cleaning ritual, because I love cleaning
Mhm,
and I love cleaning rituals. And we actually, my own culture, we do that in springtime. We have a lot of springtime cleaning
mhm.
rituals. What if either before you clean or after you clean, you either throw away three things that represent three things that day or that month that you really want to let go of? Or another idea that just came to mind is, what if at the end of cleaning you washed your hands three times to represent the three things that you want to let go of from that day or that month or whatnot? And the reason is that it helps to focus on what this cleaning can represent, right? So instead of just like cleaning and it feeling good, it actually, you can bring in other things into that experience that are maybe not part of the house cleaning. Like, I want to let go of that job, or I'd like to let go of that relationship, or I want to let go of this pattern, right? It's an opportunity for certain
Yeah.
things to be represented in that thing. And that's like the next level of ritualizing those beautiful moments.
I love that, and I love everyone listening to hear those things because for me, what I do is I move every time I clean, I move things because it is my reminder that nothing stays the same. People may know this. I'm a little OCD and I like things in a certain way, in a certain place where I know they are. And I started to move all my books around every time I clean. So every week, everything is a little bit different and never in the same. And that is my reminder to be comfortable with the discomfort. How do you suggest people go about looking at rituals in a different way, but also slowing down enough to appreciate making the markers? I loved your story about the woman that retired and never celebrated it, because what it brought to mind is how many birthdays come and go. Every birthday is a big birthday because you're here walking the planet.
Yeah.
But especially milestone birthdays or anniversaries or things that happened with our friends, new jobs, changing jobs, anything.
I'll give you an example.
Right? Births. And we don't take that moment to celebrate.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll give you an example from this past weekend. My best friend contacted me and she said, a friend of mine is just graduated from got her master's. She just graduated, and I said I would do something to celebrate her, and we're going on a hike. And I personally know the author of Hello Goodbye, and I need some help. Can you help me make a ritual for us? Something really simple, but doable. So I said, okay, you're going on a hike. I said, are there any bridges on the hike? She said, no, there's no bridges. I was like, great. Okay. So here's what you're going to do. I said, as you hike, I want you and your friends that are hiking to collect flowers, flower petals. That's number one. Just collect flowers. I said, number two, when you get to a certain spot on your hike, I want you all to then collect rocks. And I want you to make 2 parallel lines with the rocks. I said, is that doable? She said, absolutely. I said, great. I said, number 3, your friend that's graduated, I want her to sit on or stand on one side of those 2 parallel lines that are going to now be a bridge. And you and the other friends that are there, you be on the other side. And I said, and I want you to ask her when she's on that other side, what happened? What happened over the last few years while you were studying in your program? What did you accomplish? What did you love? What did you hate? Ask her the questions you're curious about. Let her reflect on the years of studying for this master's. And then I said, and then you're going to ask her, are you ready to graduate? Are you ready? And then if she says yes, invite her to cross the bridge, and not just cross, maybe invite her to dance across. And when she approaches the other side, you take those flower petals and you make them into confetti and you throw them in the air and you celebrate her arrival as a graduate. Is this all doable? And she's like, absolutely. Yesterday, I got a phone call, reported back. She said it was amazing. She said her friends felt seen. She felt heard. She felt recognized. She felt accomplished. She felt like she could move into the next chapter of her life. That's an easy, doable ritual. It's creative. That one was nature-based. It didn't really require any kind of thing to purchase. And it made all of her friends and her closer. So it's so powerful.
It's so powerful and so beautiful. And anyone listening, I can feel myself tearing up with it because I can feel how amazing that would be to be part of that and to receive that. What a gift.
Right.
To receive your friends doing that and having that moment is a gift you carry all your life. It also reminds me how far we've gotten away from those moments of being able to celebrate each other. And in turn, what you do is you truly celebrate nature. You bring us back to the connection of Mother Earth and
Yeah.
how amazing it is, and how much is at our disposal from foraging and looking at things if we could actually use our awareness.
I'm sure you're aware, but maybe your listeners aren't. I do a 9-month teacher training
Mm-hmm.
for morning altars. And we're actually, in 2 weeks, we're doing the last weekend together. And the whole one is based on impermanence, and change. And in the training, we do these incredibly creatively designed little things that take the practice and kind of twist it, right? And so we're doing something similar, although hopefully no one from my training is listening to this recording because it's going to be a surprise. But we're doing threshold altars. And one of the things that they get to do is they get to decorate an entranceway in their home. So like this door behind me, they get to forage and decorate it, like vines and flowers and incredible altars in front of it. And they get to acknowledge one threshold that they're walking through in their life, something they need to be witnessed in. And everyone in the cohort gets to see it and celebrate it. And then they get to cross over that threshold together. And what it does is it not only gives them a chance to really bring attention and beauty to what's changing in their life, but it also allows them to celebrate it and be witnessed in it. And those are the moments where life happens, when things change. We're talking about like beautiful moments now. I mean, grief-filled moments are different, but beautiful threshold moments, we need to celebrate and acknowledge and witness each other in those moments together. And that's what the graduate story also was about, is employing nature and beauty and ritual to mark change, to make it beautiful, to not just pass through it and ignore it, but to actually be changed by it.
As you're talking about, I'm reflecting on the good celebrations and where those markers that I've had in my life and I remember. And I remember more as a child of true celebration of coming together and babies being born, right, into families and little kids everywhere and making crafts and using our hands and baking
Exactly.
and all the things that would mark this new life coming into a family, and how that would be set up. And it feels so many of us have gotten so far away from that. And I think one of the greatest gifts that we can give each other is to witness each other and truly be present and witness what someone is going through and celebrate with them.
When I was a kid, my aunts and uncles had me create a little crown out of construction paper and glitter, when my mom was in the hospital giving birth to my brother. And that crown was me. It said, I think it said something like, "I'm a big brother," or something like that. And I got to wear that crown when my mom came home with my younger brother. And it was just an arts and craft project.
Mm-hmm.
But really what it was doing was acknowledging my change in purpose in the family. I was no longer just the only child. I was now a big brother. And my aunts and uncles acknowledged that in me. And that helped me step into a new role. I was only, 4 years old, but it helped me step into a new role. It helped me feel acknowledged and witnessed. It allowed me to feel special. These are
And
tiny little
seen,
rituals, huh?
right? And seen. Whereas
And
some children start to feel, the older one feels forgotten because
exactly,
the new shiny one comes in, right? The new loud
exactly.
one comes in. That is such a beautiful thing. Let's talk about creativity. You are a creative.
So are you.
I am. I am.
So are
You
all of us.
are, and I believe so are all of us. But we often forget that. I read, and I love that you said this because it resonated so much, and I know it will with my listeners as well. The mess is necessary.
Yeah.
When you're creating, the mess is necessary.
Yeah. You know, if you've read any of my writing, you know I love words.
Mm-hmm.
And I love etymology specifically. I like when we look at the roots of words, where they come from, how they
Yeah.
change over time, how they move. What's the etymology of the word mess? The origin of that word means food, like a mess hall.
Hmm.
So when we talk about mess, we're talking about the nourishment that feeds life, right? So think about like compost.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually the rich soil where new growth comes from. When we allow ourselves creatively to be in the mess, in the dreaming, in the uncertainty, in the wandering, in the not knowing, in the it it allows the space for new ideas, new visions, new inspiration to come through. It's not wrong. It's necessary, the mess. It's the food, it's the nourishment. It's where you get like all the new things come through. So, but put the word mess in direct conflict with the culture that we live in, which loves everything to be nice and neat, to be efficient, to be competent, to be productive. It doesn't have a lot of space for mess. I recently won a creative works grant in collaboration with an organization. I'm going to be making this like 50-foot art installation next spring. And they came to me and they said, my organization that I'm in collaboration with, they said, we're really excited about this. Let's get on a Zoom call. So they brought on their team, the marketing people and the executive board and the social media people. And they brought on everyone onto this first meeting. And they said, okay, we got an agenda. We want to accomplish this, that, this, that. Here are the dates. Can you do a vision board? Da, 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 da. And I said to them, no. I said, what I need from you is at least 3 months to leave me alone so I could be messy, so I could dream, so I could play. Don't talk to me about any of this stuff for 3 months. I need you to keep a holy container, HOLY, a holy container that protects my mess. I said, because the mess is going to be where any good idea comes from that you want to advertise, that you want to market. It's going to come from just me allowing to be sloppy and to not know and to make weird choices. And
I
that's
agree.
where the good stuff comes from.
Yeah, I
Let
agree.
me
But
dream.
I love hearing creatives talk about it, and I think it's so important. And I am always mindful that I have some younger audience members listening to me that are coming into their creativity, that they feel mess is disruptive or they're doing it wrong, right?
Yeah.
They haven't mastered whatever it is they're doing. And I think with creativity, curiosity is always number one. Be as curious as you can be and be as
Yeah.
playful as you can be, and experiment as much as you can,
Yeah.
because 20 things may not work, and that's okay. You'll still learn a lot during that process. And then one thing will either fuse everything else together, or it will just give you what you're looking for in
I,
the end result you're working towards.
I totally agree. I would ask your audience, especially your younger audience, to
Mm-hmm.
consider a reorientation. And here's the reorientation. Creativity, we are creative. Everyone, whether you or not you admit it, but you've been created, so you are creative, in my opinion. However, inspiration, ideas, vision may not come from you. They may come through you. And your job in many ways is to stay open to those inspirations, to those movements, and to be aware of what's blocking them. And when we allow ourselves to be messy and dream and not know, we are in some ways reconnecting to the source of inspiration, which is life.
Mm-hmm.
You're not at the center of it, right? You're a part of it. And so in some ways, it undoes our culture's belief that you're at the center, you're at the top, you're in control. You're not. I mean, when I wrote my last book, there were so many moments where I sat at the freaking screen and nothing came through. And I was there for like 5 hours, nothing. And then one day, like, I wrote a whole chapter in 2 hours. There's no sense to it. In some ways, I was trying to hook inspiration and trying to create a beautiful space for the muse to come in and enter me. But she's unpredictable. And so I think part of the reorientation is decentering yourself and allowing yourself to be in the dream and the mess and the uncertainty as a way of remembering and humbling yourself that the more we can allow ourselves to connect back into the greater whole, the more we open ourselves up to receive new inspiration and
I
remove
love
ourselves.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I think it's such an incredibly important thing, and being lucky enough to speak to so many creatives from different areas of creativity, I have the belief that we are all inherently creative, all of us. We have things that maybe light us up of how we look at it, but we are creative beings by nature,
Yeah.
is my belief. And we try to do creativity right,
Yeah.
as I'm air quoting, or we somehow have been led to believe that creativity is an end result or an end product,
Right.
not a process or a
Right.
lens through which we can view the world and each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. I'll add, and this is a little vulnerable for me to say, but I like to proceed with my vulnerabilities as a strength. I believe that creativity moves as the seasons do. And sometimes they're incredibly fecund and there's so much new ideas and new growth. Sometimes it's like the summer and things are just fruiting and you can feel the ripeness. Sometimes creativity feels like you're losing something or something's starting to wither. And sometimes it's like winter, where in many ways, I feel like in my creative practice, I've been there for about a year, where there's just not a lot of work being accomplished. And there's a lot of dreaming and considering and gestating. And rather than seeing that as something wrong or shouldn't be, or trying to get over and back in, can I just let myself rest? Can I understand creativity cyclically, where it has to go through this process for something new to come in? And again, it takes me out of a sense that I'm in control. And it puts me back into the natural cycle of things.
And I agree with you. I think we go through seasons of everything in life. And our creativity is one of them. And it's learning the grace when you're in a winter and you're not bearing what you want to bear and you're pushing against it. It is learning to surrender and giving yourself the grace to actually go through that, and then excited for the next spring to come.
Yeah. And remembering it's all impermanent.
Yeah.
All of it. It's all changing all of the time. And, in some ways it's a dance, and staying limber, flexible, curious, imaginative inside of the dance, however the music changes.
Yeah.
I don't do this anymore, but in New York, when I lived there, I used to do 5 rhythms. And the dance, it's like they put on 5 different songs essentially, and each one asked us to move differently and dance differently. And then one of them was silence, and it asked us, how do we move inside of silence? And I don't think that's so different than the creative movements. You know, how do we move when things are flowing? How do we move when things are withering? How do we move when things are just silent and gestating? You know, and learning that the dance with creativity is very dynamic. It asks different things of us at different times, as opposed to like on and off. Because creativity is it's not a machine. It's alive. And it needs different things that living things need. It needs different kinds of attention.
Yeah, agreed. And it needs, I believe, and I have found again for myself, it needs rest.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Amen.
And it is tensional
Yeah.
as well. And for me, realizing it is a lens through which to look at things. And that is one of the reasons why I love your work so much, for many, many other reasons, because you can see the lens that you look at and encourage other people to look at is so multifaceted, with the connection to themselves, the celebration and the witnessing of others, the connection to earth, taking those moments of mindfulness and playfulness and curiosity and bringing everything together. It's such a beautiful body of work, and to see the fact that you do not just classes for people to come to and learn from you and work with you, also certification, which is really amazing as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the things I'm the most creative with right now, and my heart's the most in is giving folks around the world. We're about to graduate our third cohort of 75 students from 8 different countries.
It's amazing.
Social workers, art therapists, death doulas, kindergarten teachers, the skills to bring this modality based in nature, based in creativity, based in ritual to their clients and communities. And to me, that's the most important thing. Is I'm just one person carrying a bundle of seeds. But if I can give these seeds to other people and they can plant them in the soil of their communities and their clients, and that grows there, then we're really creating a movement here. And that's my number one goal, is for this practice, this modality, to reach as many people around the world as possible and help
And
them.
I think the community is something that I talk about a lot, and it has become so incredibly important to me, more so than ever before, with all the changes that we're seeing all over the planet and personal changes that I have gone through. You realize how much community is so incredibly important, and at times how much life has pushed us away from our communities. Communities saved my life as a young gay woman coming out. Community was everything. It was where you had to go to be nurtured, taught, taken care of, and safe as well. And I think we all have our own community and communities that we live in, we work in, we choose, some we are born in. And it's realizing that within those communities, we really are one big community here on this magnificent planet of ours. But if we can witness, support, share, hold space, and inspire each other through these beautiful actions of celebrating a graduation or a new birth or a job or
coming out of the closet. And
coming out, what a beautiful celebration.
Next time we talk, I'll tell you my coming out story, which is filled with community and ritual, and I'm happy to share that.
I would love that. I think the more we can share those stories, and the more we can share with your inspiration, the rituals behind them, I will encourage everyone to go to the links, to look at your books, to follow you on Instagram. And I will be reaching out because now I am not only, it feels, I stop myself, so I'll regroup my thoughts. It would feel very vulnerable and also very needed to do your work in the way that you do it, not just to be an observer and someone inspired by what you do and looking at what you do to participate in it feels a little,
I would love that.
it feels a little icky for me. And it feels like it would be a really vulnerable place for me to go, which tells me that I need to do that. So whenever I feel like that and I get all of those feelings in me, I know that it's something that I actually need to pursue and do, and to let some things go in a celebratory way and to welcome in some new things. So
you're welcome anytime into the community. It is the most wildly creative, nature-loving, heart-centered bunch of people around the world that I've ever met. It is a place of inspiration. You're more than welcome anytime you want to come and join us. Seriously.
Thank you. I will be coming soon. Thank you for your time. I'm so honored and so grateful that we got to connect. You got to share the beautiful work that you're doing, who you are as a human, which is amazing as well, and the incredible soul that you are. And thank you for the inspiration, personally, but also what you're doing to show us pathways forward to support each other and to celebrate milestones, all of them, and also to witness each other in such a beautiful, beautiful way.
Thank you. And
Thank you, Dave.
I want to just say thank you for being so hospitable to me in this conversation, and also just being an ally, a creative ally in the world, and encouraging people to create space, to be inspired, to become more alive, to keep open to inspiration, and to feed the world with imagination. So thank you for just continuing to be an amazing ally and
Means a lot.
pillar in that.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for listening.